Welcome back, everyone. We are coming right back at you with World War I. This is 1916. The war's been going on for almost 2 years now. See the other videos that we already posted, 1914 and 1915. Let's jump right into it. Hit that like button. Lego.
World War I was supposed to have been a short and glorious war. But by 1916, a new kind of industrialized warfare had seen the death toll soar into the millions, with no end in sight.
Crazy.
Naval blockades were beginning to cause shortages of food and fuel across Europe, while thousands of women had entered the workforce, replacing the men sent to fight in their millions.
And this is not as popular, obviously, as World War II's version of this, when we saw more women enter the workforce. But World War I seems like they had a significant amount as well. Don't really think about that when you're thinking about, you know, when women really enter the workforce. You think 40s and 50s. There was a prelude to that. Interesting.
All sides were preparing for a long war.
The Great War.
The war has raged for a year and a half as the Allies continue to battle the Central Powers, recently joined by Bulgaria.
And it's just so sandwiched here. You know? Germany's obviously the meat and potatoes of this. Ottoman Empire kind of held their own, honestly. Austria-Hungary has just needed all the support they could get, which why Bulgaria joins late in this war. Pretty much the entire world is either for the Allies or neutral, besides these countries.
At sea, the British maintain their naval blockade of Germany, preventing the import of food and other vital raw materials. Germany has retaliated with a U-boat blockade of Britain, but has to limit its attacks to avoid provoking the neutral USA, whose citizens have already been caught in the crossfire.
Oh yeah, we pissed.
On the Western Front, French, British and Belgian troops are dug in opposite the Germans, both sides trapped in the bloody stalemate of trench warfare. On the Eastern Front, the Russians have ended their long retreat and stabilized the line.
Yeah, they had to fire whoever was leading that, and then Nicholas started leading. Did he hand it off to someone, or is he still like the head?
But their army has suffered huge losses. On the Italian front, Italian troops have launched a series of costly, unsuccessful attacks against strong Austro-Hungarian defences. While on the Balkan front, the Central Powers have overrun Serbia, whose army is forced to make a bitter retreat through the Albanian mountains.
And we got to remember, a third of Serbia's army will fall. That is just like proportionate, like they said last video. It's unheard of. A third. They don't really have a lot of support. They're kind of on their own.
Now, on the 5th of January, Austro-Hungarian troops attack Montenegro. They are delayed at the Battle of Mojkovac, but 3 weeks later, Montenegro is forced to surrender. On the Caucasus front, the Russians launch a surprise winter offensive against Ottoman Turkish forces. 6 weeks later, Russian troops occupy the city of Erzurum. In April, they capture the Black Sea port of Trebizond. Meanwhile, the British transport 2 motorboats to Lake Tanganyika in Africa. They finally arrive after a 10,000-mile trip by sea and land, and help the British seize control of the strategic lake from local German forces.
Wow. It's another portion of the, that's not really talked about at all.
The same month, in German Cameroon, German troops besieged on Mora Mountain for 18 months finally surrender to the Allies. It marks the end of the Cameroon campaign.
Slowly squeezing out the Germans, aren't we? We're done.
On the Western Front, the Germans unleash a devastating assault on the French fortress town of Verdun.
And I don't remember a lot, but what I do remember is Verdun's one of these pivotal battles of the war.
German General Erich von Falkenhayn knows France will defend this symbolic town to the last man. His plan, in his own words, is to bleed France white in its defence. It is the strategy of attrition. Verdun becomes one of the most terrifying battles of the war, a mincing machine, where infantry divisions are destroyed almost as fast as they can be fed into the line. In Britain, 1 million men have already volunteered for military service. But the government realizes it won't be enough. Britain becomes the last major power to introduce conscription. That spring on the
So, obviously, 90% of you probably know conscription, but the draft, basically, is what that means.
Western Front, British troops are the last to be issued with steel helmets. The nature of trench warfare produces a high proportion of head wounds. The German Stahlhelm, the French Adrian helmet, and the British Mark I steel helmet offer limited protection from shell splinters and shrapnel.
Yeah.
Neutral Portugal has been cooperating with the British, which seems to offer the best chance of holding on to her African colony, Portuguese Angola. On the 9th of March, Germany retaliates by declaring war on Portugal. On the Eastern Front, Russia launches an attack near Lake Narok to relieve pressure on the French at Verdun, but it's a disaster. There are 100,000 Russian casualties, and the attack fails to divert any German troops from the fighting at Verdun.
The battles, just the casualties alone, just pale. Make everything else pale in comparison to this. Nothing will come close to this versus World War II. Like, this is insane. Like, we've done a lot of history reactions on this channel. A lot of it focused on wars and battles and so forth. These numbers are just atrocious. Also thinking about the time it takes these numbers to even accumulate. So short of time.
In Dublin, Irish Republicans launch an armed revolt against British rule. It becomes known as the Easter Rising, and is put down after 6 days of street fighting.
That's crazy. Arab revolt against what, British?
In the Middle East, after a 5-month siege, British forces at Kut surrender. General Townsend leads 9,000 British and Indian soldiers into captivity. About half later die from starvation or disease.
Wow.
Britain wants Arab support in its fight against the Ottoman Empire, so it's promised Arab leaders an independent Arab state after the war. But now, Britain and France secretly sign the Sykes-Picot Agreement, planning after the war to divide the Middle East into British and French zones of control.
So you have Israel being the international zone, lots of Arabia, what do you call it, Kuwait and Iraq in the British zone, French zone, Lebanon, Syria, parts of Turkey, parts of Iraq. Interesting. Sykes-Picot. Did not know about that.
Unaware of this deal, Hussein bin Ali, Sharif of Mecca, leads the Arabs in revolt against Turkish Ottoman rule. In the Battle of Mecca, his forces seize control of the Holy City. On the Italian front, Austro-Hungarian forces launch a surprise attack at Asiago. Italian defences give way. Austro-Hungarian troops are poised to break through into northern Italy. That month in the North Sea, the German High Seas Fleet clashes with the British Grand Fleet at the Battle of Jutland. In the only major naval battle of the war, the British suffer heavier losses, but claim victory as the German fleet withdraws and does not re-emerge from its base for the rest of the war.
That is insane right there, that image. The HMS Lion is under shell fire. The HMS Queen Mary explodes, direct hit. Wow. When ships used to explode, like in the 19th century, it's because they hit their magazine. Wonder if it's the same. Big push on the left, Western Front.
For the summer of 1916, the Allies have planned major simultaneous offensives against the Central Powers, from east and west.
Oh.
Now they are needed more than ever to relieve pressure on the French at Verdun and the Italians at Asiago. The Russians launch their attack first. On the Eastern Front, General Alexei Brusilov has carefully maintained the element of surprise. His troops break through the enemy lines, in some places advancing 60 miles and taking 200,000 prisoners.
That's a success.
This brilliant, though costly, Russian attack achieves its aim, as the Central Powers are forced to redeploy troops from other fronts to shore up the line. At sea, British cruiser HMS Hampshire, en route to Russia, hits a mine and sinks off Orkney.
Dang.
Among the 650 dead is Britain's iconic Secretary of State for War, Lord Kitchener. 3 days later in the Adriatic, Italian troopship Principe Umberto is sunk by a German submarine. It's the
Germany's submarine and mine warfare is like kind of having naval superiority at this point.
deadliest sinking of the war, with 1,900 lives lost.
Oh my God.
On the Western Front, Britain and France launched their major summer offensive, the Battle of the Somme. Hopes are high for a breakthrough, but the first day is a disaster. A long Allied artillery bombardment fails to knock out German defences, and waves of British infantry are cut down by machine gun fire as they advance into no man's land. In the space of a few hours, the British suffer 57,000 casualties, a third of them killed. It's the worst day in the history of the British Army. But more attacks are ordered, and the battle will rage for another 5 months.
Romania? They're above Bulgaria. Let me guess, they're going to join the Allies. They'll probably join not the Allies.
Encouraged by the Russian advance, Romania joins the Allies.
Yeah!
But despite an initially successful advance into Transylvania, Romania quickly faces a counter-offensive from German, Bulgarian, and Austro-Hungarian forces.
And obviously, if anyone knows, Romania obviously used to be a part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire at one point. Transylvania area should be very familiar to them. That they're getting hit on 3 sides, though. It's tough.
The Allied force at Salonika tries to support Romania by launching their own offensive towards Monastir. With Serbian troops in the lead, there are small gains, but dogged Bulgarian resistance prevents a breakthrough. On the Western Front, General von Falkenhayn finally calls off the attack at Verdun. The French army has honoured their commander General Nivelle's promise. Ils ne passeront pas. They shall not pass. But victory comes at a terrible price. 365,000 casualties. The Germans lose almost as many.
1 million. million
Verdun
almost.
remains one of the bloodiest battles in human history.
What?
For his defeat at Verdun, Falkenhayn is sacked, and Germany's heroes of the Eastern Front, von Hindenburg and Ludendorff, take command in the west. Meanwhile, the Battle of the Somme continues. Near the village of Flers, the British introduce a new weapon they hope can break the deadlock of the trenches. It is called the tank. But despite some small successes, the first tanks are too few in number and too prone to mechanical failure to make any real impact. On the Eastern Front, Russia's Brusilov Offensive comes to an end. Casualty estimates vary wildly, but it's clear both sides have suffered catastrophic losses. Neither the Russian nor the Austro-Hungarian army ever fully recovers. On the Italian front, heavy fighting rages throughout the autumn, as Italian forces make repeated, costly assaults against Austro-Hungarian positions along the Isonzo River. The Battle of the Somme comes to an end amid autumn rain and mud. The Allies have advanced 10 miles at the cost of 600,000 casualties. German losses are about 450,000. The Allies reassure themselves that this is a winning strategy, because at this rate, Germany will run out of men first. Meanwhile, disaster engulfs Romania, as the country is overrun by the Central Powers. Romanian forces suffer 250,000 casualties. The remnants of its army take position alongside the Russians on the Eastern Front. That winter, Franz Joseph, Emperor of Austria since 1848, dies.
Yeah, huge moment in history right there. Franz Joseph, obviously, being the emperor since the 1848 revolutions, in charge of many parts of Austria during some turbulent times, the Italian independence campaigns, the Austrian-Prussian War, the continuation of heated back and forth with Russia during certain things that are happening in the Black Sea, as well as just future skirmishes. What a historic figure! Even though some believe he was a tyrant, most emperors are, but very pivotal moment right here for Austria.
He is succeeded by his son, Karl.
It's so funny. Austrian Emperor Franz Joseph. Oh.
In Britain, Prime Minister Herbert Asquith is forced from office and succeeded by David Lloyd George, while General Joffre is replaced as French Commander-in-Chief by General Nivelle, who promises victory through bold, aggressive action. Amid the comings and goings, US President Woodrow Wilson's attempts to mediate a peace settlement come to nothing. Neither side is willing to make concessions.
No. Dang, guys. Every time I see these numbers, I just get queasy. It's just crazy how much lives were lost for nothing. Like, there is no struggle here. There is no, like, deep meaning behind this war. It's just totalitarianism, nationalism, imperialism, all those different isms. Just a lot of egos and a lot of structure and a lot of fear. Crazy. Looks like 1916 is getting interesting. Germany's had a couple losses, but also you look across the field, whether it be the Ottoman Empire, the African campaigns, and then it's just been kind of dead heat outside of Europe. In Europe, it feels like a stalemate, but it feels like the Allies are slowly in the lead here. Unless you're talking about the Balkans. In the Balkans, that is the one place the Central Powers are dominating when it comes to Serbia, Montenegro, and now Romania. They're they're dominating those countries. But you know, those are the smaller powers within the Allies. United States still out of the war for now, but it's only 1916. There's more years to come. I appreciate you guys so much. I will see you guys in the next one. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Peace out. Bye-bye.